The interview room fell silent for only a second before laughter broke out. A young woman wearing a faded, carefully stitched dress stepped inside with worn-out shoes that had clearly been repaired more than once. Some people waiting outside exchanged mocking smiles. One panel member looked at her file, then at her clothes, and quietly shook his head as if the result had already been decided. But no one in that room knew that within the next few minutes, the same people who laughed would struggle to hold back their tears. If you believe kindness can change lives, and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching stories. The girl was named Aisha. She had never owned expensive books, attended a famous university, or lived in a comfortable home. She grew up in a small village where dreams were often buried beneath poverty, long before they had a chance to bloom. Her father had once been a hard-working laborer, but an accident at a construction site left him unable to walk properly. Overnight, the family's only source of income disappeared. Her mother began sewing clothes late into the night, earning just enough to keep food on the table. Many nights the family shared one meal instead of three, but they never complained because they had each other. From the time Aisha was a little girl, she believed education could change everything. She studied beneath a flickering kerosene lamp, because electricity in her village was unreliable. While other children slept peacefully, she spent long nights reading borrowed books with tired eyes. Sometimes the pages were missing. Sometimes the books belonged to seniors who needed them back before she had finished reading. Yet she memorized every lesson she could, because she knew knowledge was the only treasure no one could steal. School was never easy. Many classmates laughed at her patched uniform. Some teachers quietly doubted whether a poor village girl would ever achieve anything meaningful. Every insult hurt, but instead of arguing, she turned every painful word into motivation. Whenever she felt like giving up, she looked at her father sitting silently outside their tiny home. His disappointed eyes reminded her why quitting was never an option. Years passed slowly. She graduated at the top of her class, despite countless obstacles. Scholarships became her lifeline. She worked evenings, tutoring younger students, cleaned classrooms for extra money, and spent weekends helping her mother sew clothes. Every rupee she earned was carefully saved. She had no luxury, no vacations, and no celebrations. Her biggest reward was seeing another semester completed. When Aisha announced she wanted to prepare for the civil service examination, many villagers smiled politely while secretly believing she had lost touch with reality. They said those jobs belonged to wealthy families. With powerful connections, they believed someone like her could never compete against candidates who had private academies, expensive coaching, and endless resources. But Aisha quietly thanked them for their opinions and returned to her books. Preparing for the examination became the hardest chapter of her life. Every morning, she woke before sunrise. She walked several kilometers to the nearest library because she could not afford internet access at home. During the rainy season, her books often became wet. During winter, her fingers became numb while taking notes. There were days when hunger distracted her more than the lessons, but she continued anyway. She promised herself that temporary suffering would never decide her future. Months turned into years. The examination finally arrived. She entered the examination hall with nothing except confidence built through sacrifice. While many candidates looked nervous, despite expensive preparation, Aisha remained calm, because she knew she had already survived far greater challenges than a written test. When the results were announced, her name appeared among the highest scorers. The village that once doubted her suddenly celebrated her achievement. People who had ignored her family now visited their home carrying sweets and congratulations. Yet Aisha remained humble, because she knew the most difficult step still remained. The final interview. The morning of the interview arrived quietly. Her mother carefully ironed the only formal dress she owned. Her father smiled proudly, while hiding the tears forming in his eyes. Before leaving, Aisha kissed both their hands and silently promised she would return with good news, no matter what happened. The government building seemed enormous compared to anything she had ever seen. Candidates arrived in luxury cars wearing expensive suits and carrying polished briefcases. Some discussed prestigious universities and international internships. Aisha stood quietly in one corner, holding a simple folder filled with neatly organized documents. She noticed people looking at her clothes, whispering to one another before laughing softly. She lowered her eyes for a moment, then reminded herself why she was there. When her name was called, she walked into the interview room with steady steps. The panel examined her file carefully. One interviewer raised an eyebrow after noticing her village address. Another glanced toward her worn shoes before asking the first question with visible skepticism. The questions began politely but quickly became challenging. They tested her knowledge of economics, law, governance, ethics, history, environmental policy, and crisis management. Every answer she gave was calm, logical, and remarkably detailed. Whenever the panel attempted to confuse her with difficult situations, she analyzed every problem carefully before responding with confidence and compassion. The room slowly changed. The smiles disappeared. The interviewers, who had expected a nervous village girl, now leaned forward with genuine interest. They stopped looking at her clothes and started listening to her mind. Finally, the chairman asked a question that no textbook could fully answer. He asked what kind of officer she wanted to become if selected. Aisha paused for a few seconds before speaking from the heart. She explained that laws alone cannot change a nation unless they are carried out with fairness and humanity. She said poor people often fear government offices because they expect humiliation instead of help. She believed public service was not about power but responsibility. She wanted every elderly man, every widow, every orphan, and every struggling family to leave her office feeling respected, whether or not their problem could be solved immediately. She explained that dignity costs nothing, yet it can change someone's entire life. As she spoke, memories of her parents, her village, and every hardship quietly filled her heart. She never mentioned them directly to gain sympathy. Instead, her experiences naturally shaped every word she said. There was no rehearsed speech, only honesty. When she finished, complete silence filled the room. One interviewer slowly removed his glasses and wiped away tears. Another quietly admitted that he had judged her before she answered the first question. The chairman looked down at her application again. But this time he saw much more than academic achievements. He saw years of sacrifice hidden behind every certificate. A few weeks later, the official results were published. Aisha had secured one of the highest interview scores in the country. The news spread rapidly across social media, television channels, and newspapers. Reporters visited her small village. Children gathered outside her home, just to see the girl who had achieved what everyone believed was impossible. Her father cried openly, for the first time in many years. Her mother stood quietly beside him, unable to find words, because every sacrifice suddenly felt worthwhile. Life slowly transformed. As a civil servant, Aisha never forgot where she came from. She refused unnecessary privileges. She visited remote villages personally, instead of relying only on reports. She listened patiently to ordinary people. Farmers, teachers, laborers, widows, and students all found someone willing to hear them with respect. One winter afternoon, while inspecting a rural school, she noticed students studying under the same kind of dim light she had once used. Instead of making promises, she immediately began working with local authorities to improve electricity, school facilities, and scholarship opportunities. She understood that real leadership meant solving problems, not simply talking about them. Years later, one young girl approached her after a public event. The child shyly admitted that she also wanted to become a civil servant, but feared her family's poverty would stop her. Aisha smiled warmly and gently placed a book into the girl's hands. She explained that circumstances may delay dreams, but they do not have the power to destroy them unless a person gives up. That little girl held the book as if it were the greatest gift she had ever received. The story continued, inspiring countless others. Universities invited Aisha to speak. Young people filled auditoriums to hear her journey. Yet she always ended every speech with the same message. She reminded everyone that intelligence can be found anywhere, in villages, cities, rich homes, or poor ones. Opportunity often depends on whether society chooses to look beyond appearances. The people who once laughed at her eventually became her greatest admirers. Some apologized personally. Others silently changed the way they treated strangers. Perhaps that became her greatest achievement. Not her government position, but the hearts she changed without ever seeking revenge. Looking back, Aisha realized that every difficult night, every tear, rejection, and every sacrifice had prepared her for a purpose, much greater than success itself. Had life been easier, she might never have understood the pain carried by ordinary people. Her struggles became the reason she served with compassion instead of pride. Sometimes the strongest people are not those wearing the finest clothes or carrying the loudest confidence. Sometimes they are the quiet souls standing alone, carrying invisible battles that no one else can see. Before judging someone by appearance, remember that behind simple clothes may stand an extraordinary heart, and behind silent determination may exist a future capable of changing thousands of lives. Before this story ends, tell us in the comments, what lesson touched your heart the most? If this story moved you, reminded you never to judge someone by their appearance, or gave you hope during difficult times, please like this video, share it with your family and friends, leave a comment, and subscribe for more emotional stories that inspire kindness and courage.